Nilchís wooch'i Ňchí Ďkat Johan. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Acho Dísi ya Yéil nach satí tláak'w tlein ya Káak nach satí wooch nach satí haqqunit qanahi yi'at tlein hanaqhugud satúk yuduasak taqtain tan satí Yéil adat tuchtatan ya yidat ya ltu ach taqtain tan hasqut satí X'éig hastu tláak'w qa adayu tuchtatan datatinag saqayati yaga wash ya hastu shkalniki yechwaji ya ya teat tlein qanakhoi we teqati wushaqit we takka aqa we teat tlein sha qanakhoi jiyosatan was ʼatudli we X'éig. Just kleinach uyach sha shakir. Qonneke X'éig. Di nach we chakuta X'éig qonne kehasawa Isau tuach. Aqa shatsina tude hasawati we kleinach Qonne chiwinak with usani Kayis atkatu awshayech X'éig ye tundatani yeti hilchatleinach ye haoti ya taqtain tan hasudat yant has nak Isukach ati hashagun ya shantukatli qonne qanakhawasha ya hastu tláak'w ye tek dehin ach ya tu tlein dasti ya hanaqhugud shit kokaya atekhotin ya hastu nakihiti yikaya hasawsata tlewt isha we qonne tlakawdain Nesco Nasliye cook 18 Nasliye cook 18 Kaakhwe cook Gisuko hain Káak isani cook hatuasako yanine ye ʻatudli we nasliqutini ya Yewi tundatani ye teach adu so X'éig lingat hastu in yuchachtatani ya hastu in ya tundatani chutle nasli de has kukhwatini ya tektihin hoach ya adu sawe X'éig tusakhan ya hanakuguti Qonne hachuch tu haskaqwaat was nana qonne nana de gahtuati kashes iqwaat du yedi khonakhadat yutakhutan qa du kiik khashtakat taqtain tan hit wududlayech taqtain hit yudawasago Hechwasaku wasadu saku shukwa Gwasliknach ati aqa hit hasawchayech aqa taqtain tan qutzati wega Ashui kahuna ya hasu anich sati ya hastu Káak tlein su X'éig adadu takhutang Tek dehin hosatin adeyuch ewatani yaqa qalqagid nats tla like náaw you do sock in a way. Yeah, has to tlein. Ho owe Ḳwáani qone adayu yeji wini. Ya do Yúxch'i Ţánaí. Chuna aya aqewuti. Deoji you do a sock. Ho owe taqdain tanse. Do shitr echoji do shitr. Clarissa Rizal. Lingi qatqatseu qaq. Deoji qo aye wutien. Chiclay náaw we Yúxch'i tlein ʼatudli.átk. Kayaaní owe we taskan duji wutien. Okaya wuti Ḳwáani kawajuk. Náaw Yúxch'i Ţánaí kawshahit. Ḳwáani Kayaaní weha yechoji hutsu ya Gulsatuk kik tsu. What's that do a saga? Dísi aya hosaku. Kashiet. Ho owe a kawshahit we do Yúxch'i Ţánaí Yúxch'i Ţwáani gwalla iti sandech a qadaye jagachtuni. Tashli dat. Ye owe gwall aqewutiensu. Alaska Methodist University you do a saga. Ḳwáani Kayaaní weha hastiqu atlatu aya Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Lingi qasti we gawqo Richard Downhow. Qone owe adaye hasjuine Náaw Yúxch'i Ţánaí taqdain tan shamu. Aqa awe tegdihin Ḳwáani ye yawsaqa awe Ḳwáani. Tlil adeyan ye jin Ḳwáani ye yak. Tlashak tláak'w. Ḳwáani tláak'w Káak tláak'w. Aqa awe wooch ye hasjiwini. Wooch has with the sham. Awe tlein deich tak shuwihin. Shuide aya chwakuch yak yikt. A yikdewe aye wutien Ḳwáani seidiya Káak kehinak kinkaudanik aqjaye daljini nakishan wooch kindenda at X'éig anshawatke dastya yakdadach owe Yéil who owe aye wutiense. Dech wooch kiki uwe wooch ʼatk Qashke satuk. Ye ewe wooch Gaydaya wutuda at Yúxch'i 2003. Aqewutiensu Juan tlein. Qunachoe qawsaku. Katua aqawe we Ṭlaak'w Yúxch'i Ṭánaí jutuanak. Lingi qinach aya qutus tien. X'éig genki achasaku ya Yúxch'i Ṭánaí. Wasa akshan wunigan. Lingi qinach Aqa awe tatayide khokut nakhokutch kersigit gusuchat dakyagi sakshawe kungausa just teka winits qanakh ade awe tajkhat bujaqiya awe wasa wushitsi aqoa atkhwagut gank dakhnach khu khosatin akhyana khaswa yewe achtundetani yeyati shinget khinach yu has khawul adat yu tekhutan ha qashkahati khatsatiya yidat dehuj daqa awe khasekh qa anshawtki khoakh ya we itikak aye hawutien we ataqi iti we at dusi kashas awas kutlingit khosaku kasekh we anshawtki yosqa jo ya tlingit khinach yu has khawitan ye awe akhkuki kawaakh kasiye ye awe wasa tlingit khinach wuchin yu ʼatudli.átk chaltakata tatagi wutien tlingitaya kayéig yakhduwa akhch ye awe qanach wush kanach wutida'atjin aye wutien tlingit khinach daat wooch kanach gatu atjin ak wutien satuk ya kesh yata akakwanik kwashi se kukho awan qanin swed nach sati wush to gate ya you has to at ya has to yijni yida khne qnakhwe hashil tlein shawat tlein aya adeyeji wuneya ho owe hanakukut ya tlaak'w Sunday tlaak'w kejin yaki tu khan ayat nakutjin nakhakutjin qaakh tawasaku khu aw hi dudat akho tashas tu tuawshko ya satuk qo atu in kakhonik akho tashas tu tuawshko ya tluka khate ki aya akhukhe ti tusai gahtu sa qo ya satuk awshe yekhwe kan katsiki wasa awsa khanan khne tu tawasaku ye yawaqa shesh akhat yise qaqaq tu sai qadu yejni wasa wshitzin tu tushaani Kashkade no awshkuk we yis at we kashuk at akawa aq away ya ach in gushtatani jatak away qoa just way ach email atude da gudak so yata ye away wuchin yu ʼatudli.átk play the hin shanach Dísi kwash tleqa yagi ya wachi ach sheet geudatan wa ach email gushtatan ya qa'u ati ach jiwu ijiyes ayi ya ganach aya yeyati ya ach qahat gan yeyati ach qahat dat gwashi tawasuko ate hahiti de khukhu qashat ate khukh tash dasach khosati dasak showe we gwashi siku we Christmas dat we qatua siku we qas tin yata tuliekhi hekhwasiku wasakach tu salingit khina wreath khoa gwashi tawasiku yata akhjiwa dirhahati adakhwe khwashat nekhwa kokhu neltekh nelkha kokh khoa achjit gushtetán. Cochté na de coche ach rídach to asagu. Chetcha. He chosagu dasa e to asagu choshati. Tellasa chosatin. A catchet se o ach gant aya chosaini we gweil. Aka awe konachwe atutu shuk. Ye awa at shuk hatu naguch sati. Ajoyi in kachuniko e adan. Ye awa ach tundatani ye ati that gwalchall de catwe chingit ya has to tundatani satuk yach. Ishia dahini aha yurgatang yasagach saku. Ho awe tutlawut adat awe yuk audatan. Ho awe awat a tutlawut. We Káak shawu do yejani awe awatu. Das awe achtuasaku chosaku awe adat. Shikshani kachwawus. Tutlawut. Oh, yake tutlawut. Fortitude, you do a saga at Betuushitzin. Tutlawut koa. Stubborn. Ye awe, yake awe shingitundatani. Teslan a sewut Káak. We tutlawut. Okay. Tutlawut. One qanins. Gage. Ye awe. Gulchisha khiti sa akhi kwali tuasaku khiyatani ya yidat gug aqat qane yejakahtuni we yeshkashni gida. Again.
Dus soort massa toe uniek. Ja, je dat soort massa toe je kreeg Kosakoon Satu.
Khatsu.
Kan nog als het zien is zo wat. Nog tussen aan. Ja, je tangit zo stoeltoets chitlak. Ja, dat kan nog sakwaha. Ja, ja.
Ye awe. Ha iqawusu ha khukh yewutiya. Eka. Yake. At achtishi ituwuch aya haushanarchi. Ya yakecha. Yake. What you want to do now, folks? We looked at some pretty big stories from Frank Italia. We can sort of dip back into those, or we could just get back in the boat and hit full speed and go with a couple more stories. Skydo.
Maybe Anyasha Hash's 4 stories. Those ones are like nice and fun. They're on the YNLC website, or you might have already a copy. But the Lonely Man and the Seagull and the Blind Man and the Loon, they're really fun ones. But also Masa Khayadukha, guess what? Is it what I was guessing that it might be like Yisakugi Dasaya.
Oh, like you're trying to tell someone to guess?
Yeah, like I'm always like calling my mom and I'm like, guess what? And I was like, hey, how would I say that actually? And like Shinget Tunda Tani.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it kind of leads us to this verb, which is probably very rarely used. And so what you have is aushagak. And so I think you would say shagak.
And that would just be like, guess it.
Yeah, guess it. So I think you'd say, Llygawch wasa atwne. Guess what happened. Llygawch dasadat yutuchtatan. Guess what I'm thinking about. So, I mean, that would be my guess.
Okay.
And so, Gaku is a riddle. And so these are really interesting things. And so, ashkaku. So this shows you the what I would think is the imperfective of it, which tells us it's an act verb, it's L classifier, and it is zero conjugation. I think, but it's hard to tell. So like if you're ever looking at a verb, so let's say just like this. So you're like, huh, and so like I go into these, like I'd go into the verb dictionary and I go into Jeff Lear's notes and I would say guess. And like we always got to remember, like these notes were typed by Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Like just looking for a summer project. I was like, you want to type up 800 pages of handwritten verb notes? And she didn't even, there was not even any hesitation. It's like, yeah. And so because of that, we have a searchable document, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And then trying to do the same thing with the Tlingit verb dictionary. It is searchable for English, but I'm hoping that we'll have a searchable Tlingit version, hopefully by the end of the summer. It's one of my summer projects. But so as we look this stuff up, so what he usually gives us is an imperfective and a perfective. If you could, that's what these, and then sometimes like you'll see in parentheses here, the conjugation prefix, which really helps us. Like that really, if we have this, we have almost everything we need. So the reason I'd say almost, so this says gahu in a noun form, and that's long and high. That really helps. So like we got to sort of like put the pieces together. So the one thing is we say ashkak. They are making riddles, they are making people guess. That is in the imperfective. And so there's a few things that we don't really know about this verb, but by looking at all this thing, we could put it together. When I say ashkak, my first prediction is this is a zero conjugation verb because it's short and high in the perfective. Now there is a chance that it's an invariable stem. Like you could say ausekhan, and you would say ausekhan, that's got to be zero, but it's actually ga. And you would have, and so, but it takes a lot of work to sort of put all these things together. So you could take this like aushagach, and you could go to a speaker and you say, do you recognize that verb? Aushagach. They're making someone guess, or they had them guess, or they guessed. Like they took a guess. So this, if that's the case, if it's a zero, then the command form would be shla, so L-A, gach, just like that. Shagach, if that had changed from sh to shla. Because all commands have to be -I classifiers. There's a couple of things we still don't know about this verb, though, because it's only given to us in third person. We don't know if that's just the that stays locked on there. But we can check in here and see if is it listed in here? So we'll go to, I don't see it. So the way that they do things in here is it's alphabetical, but what we have to remember is their method of alphabetizing the vowels is it's going to go the I vowels, which is going to be double E, the E vowel, which is going to be EI, so they always write them long, the U vowel, which is going to be OO, and then lastly is the A vowel, which is going to be AA. At the very end of these, though, they'll have ones that are invariable. So gunt, that's short and high every time. That's why they write it that way. But they don't have this verb for guessing. And so so I would say shagak, masa atpune and tlaguk dot sa you tuch wa tunk. Guess what I'm thinking about right now. And then you end up with dot sa, which is always fun. I always forget that it's dot sa, which is very fun to say in Tlingit. That's a good one. But now that gives us a new verb to mess around with and to try and see. Because you can also, sometimes I could search my computer and just see what comes up if I type guk. And it's in a document. It might be in some of Crippen stuff. I don't know. Maybe not. That was a good question. So we are doing, the plan is to do Raven stories, though. So we're going to stick to Raven stories for now. I think it's a great idea to do all 4 of those stories, though, before the semester ends of Anyasha Hash. So maybe we can sort of bump those to after the Raven book. Skydu.
Yeah, can we do all of them except for The Blind Man and the Loon? Because I'm gonna try to tell that one in the end.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Anything else?
Just click at satuk that tláak'w hu ka ida kutan tantikihinik just tlein wooch wududzitin satu kashke ka dal tsakutla ka audigan yagi ka kunach yake kunach klach kau sugu do ide sugar hatati.
Gunchish. She's also the one that coined this wonderful joke. What do you call a hot tub in Tlingit? Jacuzzi. 5 stars. That's a 5-star.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thinking of like these Yéil, these are big stories. They're big stories. And the Raven stories are so interesting to me because there's so much funny stuff that goes on in them. There's a lot of just wild stuff. Like, and we'll see in some of the shorter ones, like some of like Raven is very predictable but unpredictable. I do believe it goes in a sequence of stories. What's this? Oh, goodness, sheesh. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So then, just looking at what Chiwu put in the chat, and sheesh. Whoa, that's so cool. A guessing game. Like we absolutely need to use this. That must be a Henya speaker, I'm guessing. People always talk in riddles. And so here, because this has the perfective built in there, it confirms that it's a 0 conjugation verb. I guess what we would need to do is to say, I guessed it. And if you say I was guessing or I was making, the other thing is like, there's probably a related verb here So if we look at the translation, it's to ask someone a riddle. But I wonder, like, if this is, sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the definition of some of these verbs, just the way that they work. So if you say, I would guess if you said ʼatudli.átk, or you'd say ʼhawdli.átk or ʼhamdli.átk, they made us guess. So for example, you could say ʼhamdli.átk gu'sa hakatichayi. They made us guess where our keys were, right? And then you see here, to guess, for someone to make a guess is maybe it switches back to the L classifier. There's still a few things to sort of figure out here. And so when you're figuring these verbs out, like, you start changing the subject. So if you say, what if they made me guess? Or what if I took a guess? I guessed what it was. And so if they say ʼchwadliguk, then you know that it's a transitive verb. If they say ʼawchtliguk, then you know that it's athematic. I'm guessing it would be ʼchwadlig or ʼchwadliguk with an L classifier. Okay, good sheesh. How fun. New verbs, it's always a fun time to find a new one. So the way, when I was working on the Raven book, when it comes out, I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but what I had proposed was having the ones who told a whole bunch of them, especially the ones who told them right in a row, those ones went first. So, and then it was arranged just by order of when they were recorded. So it goes Frank Italio, Susie James, Bob Zuboff, I think Austin Hammond, and then, well, let's take a look at the book so I don't have to guess. But just in terms of how these things were put into an order, so there's Ḳwáani, Frank Italio, Tuskegee, Susie James. And just like, look at the order of these. Raven and his uncle, Raven makes the illusions, Raven and fire, Raven in the salmon box. Raven goes down among the bull kelp, which is also when he releases the tide. Raven and blueberries, Raven and the potlatch, Raven and the killer whales, Raven and the whale, Raven loses his nose, Raven in the daylight. The next one is Shadok, Robert Zuboff. And I think his is a little different from these, because these first two, you have these very long recordings where they're telling them right in a row. When we listen to Susie James, which will probably be next week, just prepare your ears. I think it felt like there's a gooseneck microphone, so it's got like a metal stem, and they move it, and it's very loud, very loud. Someday I or someone else will go in and clean those things up so it doesn't scare you, and then there's a little dog that barks very loud sometimes. So Shadok tells quite a few of them, but I do think these are isolated recordings. So Raven and his uncle, Raven in the flood, Raven makes the illusions, Raven in the salmon box. We only have the recording of one of these. The other one was lost. Raven and fire, Raven makes people. Then we get Nakashan, Frank Dick, Raven and his uncle, Raven in the daylight, Raven in the salmon box, Raven and fire, Raven in water, Raven and whale, Raven goes down along the bull kelp, Raven deceives his little brother, Raven and king salmon, Raven and cormorant, Raven in the house of ghosts, Raven pretends to build a canoe. Then we get Donawalk, Austin Hammond, where he tells Raven in the fog hat, Raven in the daylight, Raven in fire, Raven in water. Yúxch'i, so this is a one recording. I think it was done at a radio station in Haines, Deishu. And then we have the last one, which is Yúxch'i, which is the auntie of Satuk. So her sister recorded these. And these are also isolated stories. Raven in the salmon box, Raven in the king salmon, Raven in the brown bear, Raven in the deer, Raven and whale, and raven is always hungry. Then we move into the next section, which is kind of singular raven stories. So a lot of these, and some of these are like a series, and so you could certainly argue that Willie Marks should maybe get bumped up. But again, presented in the order of when they were recorded. Raven and Whiskey, this is Kayaaní and Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, Raven and the Sea Otter People. We're going to listen to those two this evening. And then this one, Yéil, Káak, by Jimmy Johnson. I thought it was a different speaker, but I think this is the one I was talking about. It's not Johnny C. Jackson, it's Jimmy Johnson. Náaw, Raven, Seagull, and Heron, Raven and Water, Raven and Fire, Raven and Whale. X'éig has two different versions of Yéil, but she also tells, a lot of times when people tell those, they go right into Yéil, Raven deceives his little brother. Náaw, Ḥwáani, Raven and Blueberries. Gunanasti, Raven and Water. ʼAtudli.átk, Raven and the Origin of Dance, Raven and the Hooligan, Raven and Daylight. Danawak, this one, I guess it should say Danawak Kahudzi. So he tells the story of Raven loses his nose. In front of, there's a hat that's made for it. And then Anna Katzig, David Katzig's mom, does the live translation. And it's so fun because they're slightly different, which I think is very fun. And then Nora and she translated like line by line. And so all three of those versions are there. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, I think recorded the second time I ever met her, I think. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, and Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. There are ones in English, but we're not going to mess with those because we're here for Xingit. But they are in here. Whenever this collection does come out, I'm so curious to see what it's going to look like. We do have this version to study from. This is a project upcoming from the Alaska Heritage Institute. This is the work in the final collection of Nora Marks Dowenhauer and Richard Dowenhauer in their Tlingit Oral Literature series. Took 40 years to get to this point, and it'll be fun when it comes out. So these ones have some songs in them. This is also from De Laguna. Oh, I think I said I was going to put a link to the De Laguna collection on our webs page, which I will do.
Maybe just before you get into this, do you have recordings for most of these, or are you going to put them on the website? Like,
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So as we go through them, so the three recordings I think that we did on Tuesday are up already, and so then I'll put a link in the chat to where you could find them all.
Okay. Jeez.
I gotta kind of move them over and stuff, so it just takes a minute. Okay, so I gotta share the sound. Back to the book. Are we Lingi? Okay, so this speaker is Kayaaní Charlie White.
I'll hold it here when you're talking. Then when you start to sing, when you put it down there. That's a good idea.
Shukona khayaksa takata sakasi khayo kustanin Káak chaos aya itat ayo tat khayo shakautlisi yun khaan shukuye te Yéil ayo aqayat iqatu tlitsis anu shishkunagi Tehitayo ogiye te Yéil. Tutayo Káak ʻaulliach akayo tuqata'a. Ayite iqaat anaqoq. Yo nu shishkunagi yiktaq andago yukop tenia oka wooch kasa X'éig Náaw tuqayte aya ite tiexikte xaqay tunqi ultin tiqa tegante anaqoq ay tutuj kawshikan ayuya usqa chawak texdaqsate josay kukay qawo tayu texsate tletexusate hastu ukhaat tia kiktakawte taqa ayu tuyu kaptinya waqa tuyina akilagayak tuyina akawdatliga tatiyikta awaat tuyaq awdate inwa kast tukhonte tiqana khana waqoq kitena qa'a tataqa tletwaqsawud tletqol taqotatsikut kitena atukaq titikata chatuqaqo natkawdu tilteq atahudo wata tawukqa tuchitu tutsin awdinna kena awdinna taqa taqoda deskuta katote aya kada tlukyu kast chutat qayu kushit chacha tlatluk kast takat tlatluk aqaw taqnuyedes tutinuk tuqustos qalqas halqa tushi chaqachat chaytu qus tush qalqas aya atatkhaya kawlishi Káak xaus atuat chaqwa hasukun shiyan kawtega ayasi aya kait qashi ayate Tatakatat kustoye khakikakati Yéil kamashu kharastaka Astakatu kuchichu Kakakwanya tiyese khayam Ayam au ayam ayam Tatakatat kustoye khakikakati Yéil kamashu kharastaka Astakatu kuchichu Kakakwanya tiyese khayam Ayam au Ay, True.
That was fun.
What is the noise at the beginning and the end? It goes boo.
Sounded like a little, like a kazoo or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's a pitch pipe. Why? Why is there a pitch pipe? And look at this. Oops, there you go. So this is what these were recorded on. So you see, this was in Philadelphia. Wire recording technology, when she recorded Tlingit in 1952. De Laguna was an exceptionally dedicated anthropologist who had a holistic approach to her discipline. So she was really wonderful, just in terms of having interpreters there to make sure that she was understanding what she was recording. I don't understand how a wire recording works. This is what it was recorded on. But she would, and others at the time, they would blow through a pitch pipe, and it's at like this is a A. It's 440 hertz or whatever. Like that way, when they play it back after they, or if it gets transferred to anything, they'll know if it's sped up or slowed down based on that pitch. So if they go meh, but then they listen to it and it goes me, and then oops, it's playing too fast. It's playing too slow. So that's how that gave him something to adjust the recording afterwards, which I wish we hadn't stopped doing that, at least in terms of some of these technologies. But okay, thoughts on the story? I'll say you to wooch. Kawusa, we talked about that person. That is a big person, as a composer of many, many Tlingit songs. His name was Dry Bay George. Shikauchlishi is to compose a song about. It's a little different. So a lot of times you'd say ʼatudli.átk is to compose a song. Shikauchlishi means it's composed, but it has a little bit more of a clan ownership to it specifically. On Shuk, at the edge of town. You can see iqaya quite a bit in some of these stories. Do we know what iqaya is on its own? It's a coastal term.
Is that one like ikaya along it?
Not quite. It's down the beach from it, towards the ocean. So the opposite of this one is ʼatk. So ʼatk is upland from it, away from the ocean. Iqa is down from it, towards the ocean. So when they say, duhit iqaya, down the beach from their house. Raven was all over the place, but most of these stories take place in Dry Bay. So I think there's 3 main locations given for where these Raven stories took place, although there's probably was a whole bunch of other ones, because a couple things to keep in mind. So at the beginning of this book, you'll find a whole list of place names. So Chashi, Will Geiger just grabbed a whole bunch of place names that had Yéil in it. And there was one time I had wished I had recorded it. Ḳwáani said something like, Kas ye at yaw he Yéil da the way would do a saw ʼatudli.átk. So when something strange happens at a place, they name it after Raven. So that's why you have places like Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, ravens. So if you ever see Yéil in a place name, probably something strange happened at that place. But there's a whole bunch of things, place where ravens swung. There's Yéil Ḥáatli, ravens poop. There's a whole bunch of places with Raven's name on it. But like as far as like when these stories are told, the places that they specifically name are usually Dry Bay, Hazy Islands, which is called Kayaaní. That's where he got the water. It's also where he hosted a X'éig. So Káak was living out at Kayaaní, which I'm going to go there someday. And then what was the third place? Kayaaní, Ḥwáani, and the Náaw. So going way down to what is now Káak'w to Náaw. So that's where the stories take place. And then after all of them, it's kind of, and like the different storytellers have different orders that they tell them in. If I were to tell them in a certain order, I would probably go Raven and his uncle, Raven and the rebuilds the world, or what's called Raven and the Aleutians, Raven and fire, Raven and water, Raven in the salmon box, Raven goes among the bull kelp. Then it starts to get a little tricky. Raven deceives his little brother. Then I think you have a lot of liberty if you want to add some more in here. Like this is where you would add Raven loses his nose, Raven and blueberries, Raven and the king salmon, Raven and the bear, Raven and the cormorant, Raven and Káak. And then you would end with Raven and the box of daylight. And then these are sort of after the Raven cycles. So after all the Raven cycles, he goes and lives in a rock house out in Dry Bay. And that's where we are here. So if you go out to Dry Bay, he used a rock as a chair. Tukhada'a is pretty funny. He's just sitting on his butthole. There was a speaker who came up to me and said, you know, you guys always say you want to speak like the old people. I was like, yeah, we're trying. He said, well, they used to tell me, I was like, sit on your butthole? He's like, yeah. It means like when you sit like really straight up. So, let's see. He's looking out the window. Wooch is to shoo something away. To wooch. So like this shows you as well, like to use this to wooch, like it's a very short form. Like you don't have to say do tuwasagu, and then change the second verb. You could say do to wooch kaushakan, do to wooch awacha. They wanted to eat it. He wanted to shoo them away. And it does allow you to skip a conjugation. Teich nach sati. Now that should be a low tone. Teich. That's
that to wooch, is it the second verb goes in the, is it negative perfective? No, it's
no, like this isn't even a verb. So you don't have to change the second one.
Oh, okay, cool. Chase.
It's always nice to find a shortcut. So you could say, ʼatudli.átk. I want to get out of here. I want to go. Right? And so it's pretty short. And so like, and it's also just a good one to know. Like, masa itu wooch. How do you feel about that? Right? I started hearing that with George and Marge when they would translate together. And one of them, especially Marge, when she would translate something, she'd usually turn to George and say, wasa itu wooch. Right? And so like, what do you think? It's a hortative. Let it be rock, let it be stone. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani, the people in the boat. This thing is out there. There's a rock that looks like a boat with oars sticking out of it. There's another one that's a guy and his dog. So he also got turned to stone by Raven. Kayaaní is to lower something. Then you get ʼatudli.átk, so you get the perfective fourth person of it. ʼatudli.átk, it was brought up to their lips. I remember tláak'w one time said, give me some water to drink. And I remember I was just staring at her. She's like, do you understand me? I was like, oh yeah, I was just curious why you said ʼatudli.átk. I always hear jeet. And so, sorry, I was just sitting there thinking about it when I should have been getting her some water. Kayaaní, nothing happened. That's kind of cool. It was all okay. Ǩatud, do we know ǩatud? Ǩatud? Halfway up a container. So if you want to know how to say, like, so when people say, is it half full or half empty? You say, it's a ǩatud. Knock it off. And you could say ʼatudli would be like halfway up a mountain. This one, I know we gotta be sensitive about like alcohol stories, but what this does show us though is Yúxch'i would be they are regularly intoxicated. So this shows us it's a na conjugation verb. It puts you in front of it, the K at the end. It probably has a plus I classifier in there somewhere. Well, it would. So you'd say Yúxch'i Ḳwáani is what I would expect for like, oh yeah, they're intoxicated regularly. But if you put klesh in front of it, and then that pushes that classifier minus I, klesh Yúxch'i, they're never drunk. So the negative repetitive is how you generally get to never. Then he to stamp out a song with your feet, I guess. And then he sings a song. Which gets us to Yéil, Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. So again, volume 3, so this does show you which book you could find these in. There are PDF versions of all of the Mount St. Elias. You could pay $600 for the 3 books if you want to, but you can also just have the PDF versions. This one is a little less linear, I found. So, and I think the recording will be up, but I think we'll skip the song on this one as far as what we're playing.
Ian Kayaaní Ħwáani ya kekirtishisi ashikokhsa yachti kakotlanik hena khatkhaya gut hat ugut yos Yéil Aí te tuotini atayo. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani xotayo uwakut. Yéil. Ayo ako aq. X'éig akuchi ayataqtax. Ilkwatch. Yunaqayo testuasiko. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani chitqayo tláak'w. Aya yekishkawtlinik. Utichun. Tuyo Káak ogonyo yaqalya. Aqa aya tlatu inkawtuwanik. K'uqawa. Yu aya. Kaya qutqta awate. Aya. Atatqaya ketkaqtushiyaitat. Также.
So then he does sing the song. And then Ch'ák'w ʼatudli. I guess maybe we'll try and skip ahead.
Kashukun Asiya Yatluktakate Shukun Ayaxiti Yéil Ayaya Kuti Akayu Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Tláak'w Yutoqusun Akaye Qasiya.
So the context of this story is Raven wanted to learn how to use pitch for medicine. So he pretended to be hurt so that those sea otters would show him how to use it. And that's how we know how to use ʼatudli. Do one more. It's really fun to listen to the different rhythms of these speakers. It's really, really fun. So I was working on this with the last Lingi class I ever took, which was in 2007 with Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. And we had a bunch of people in the room. Yéil was probably there. Satuk was probably there. I don't remember in Juneau. I don't remember who else was there at that time. Náaw. And on the phone was X'éig and a whole crew with her over in Sitka. Dasta. And then the elders, we had elders who were in the room. I wish I could remember. Oh, here they are. Franklin James, Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Kingisti.
Yayi that ʼatudli.átk. ʼatudli.átk that Shukhat Hain ʼatudli.átk. Yayi you to us what Awe Yete wasako Kai Tawashuti ha Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani do Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Atawashutli ha. Awe. Tláak'w. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani tláak'w. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani tláak'w. Awat kayakuna skeni awe. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Tutaje kutsite. X'éig teyo kuwa Náaw. Achtaje yikut. X'éig te bukutewa te tukwaak tatak. X'échak watukwishk. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Aqawe Wana sawa Yéil de wasaqat tuishutli ha Yúxch'i Ḳwáani watutlaak'w shutli ha qajnuchawa watutlaak'w tuwatitate awatujuanta wakut waqa X'éig asiwatujuanta wakut X'éig to wasaqat Taday Káak Axyati awe Chatuwati awe Tewach X'éig Chawachaq X'éig Chawachaq at Káak naxsatin Achoye Yúxch'i Sak Yúxch'i Ďákate Katitukua Aqawa kanastante kukriti Yawut ayawa kukrinut Achawat ayah utsikit Kawanut iqdakte Yawut aya Awatuik awa Yatxutliyech Yúxch'i Yúxch'i tujantkut Ashukawata Ayahawa wutsikit Akananut awa Chakawutsiti Chatagoyana wat Ayakunaske awa Yúxch'i Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Ayiktakhawanat awatukwishk Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Chetukwak awaya kandatak Tukwa kandatak awushtakasayawakhichte Wushtakotekat Watutaje waku intach Nishkuta Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Akaya kandatak echawushtakasayawakhichte With Káak Aqawe Yúxch'i Ḳwáani Yutu as Nasqich Nasqich Hach in as Esuwa in Wat akuta ya wutskute awa watayis Chetukwak awakawa suswa in Yekte in Awa tesla tuktara kautakich. Each kaksatija iqtach shanatech satija wa eskututara kautakich. Wa in Utowasak wat in Taushikich. Deskutara Yúxch'i Káak Yishikijaka Ayutu Náaw Yutu Náaw Awushusa Kutsiti atayo yunak akawusula. Kaya kawadani unewa kutoza chayes. Akhyara kudye kawa tatana yisak yeusin. Akhyara kudye kawa shawsichok. Ashawsichok. Ye. Tatana ye. Chakawuskuta waye yawaka. Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Shkaqilha. Tláak'w Náaw yatko. ʼatudli.átk. Tláak'w taqonew sikut. What the Káak hitite. X'éig ishtakido sakuye takshaki. Akyutek pachiche oye yawaka. Shni shwat kunacha. Sayuta wakich. Tek oyash la swat tewanish. Yika kunaskeni awete. Kante yuya wakawati Káak. Shkaqisha. Chanaqati khusit. Tanik tawkuto hina kawakich. Hina kakakich awaye awakawaka Yúxch'i Ḳwáani. Hat kakatata wakis. Chakode kawata wakis. Waye shutu wasakwa chkwaye naskash tlein kakata. Se tlein kutash. Ashawa tláak'w Káak. Kakata. Iteara takatawa tiye yawaka. Wayeshkoa. Tukha. Kutskukudo sakwat. Atukawa akawusleo. Kutskukuk. Chayasin git alikat kakihu. Chakadi sakakto okchasin git ane. Akat kakihu. Tutsa. Wayesh tutsa. Ayahawa ute. An kaslakho. Chayek to nik yetu tlaak'w. Chayukus kawata. Awaw tláak'w Yéil. Yukus. Yindan kaslate. Chayindaw huktud. Yak anasake otetak shutichich Yéil. Achye naskitiek oye kayaka. Kacha tekshe. Yuwa kayaka Yéil. Achye naskitiek. Kacha. Akaka kaskitit. Yuya Káak. Ayahawa kautsikit. Kacha kakausikit. Kachkish kahukoye yasak. Chaku kauche yasak. Chuyitadite. Yitata aisin kichkotetusko. Kacha. Yuk. Kaksak inso katsukish. Kacha ido yasak. Akakawutsikit. Akakaskita waya Yúxch'i Ḳwáani ayatutta. Tiyiki tidakh yaqaqu. Ayat qawti Yúxch'i. Tiyaqaw. Hayu tiyitakh tleoxchi kay kwach. Tleo tetichi kay kawdawa kwach. Awa yante awa yakayakawa slit. Awa tlusatin مياقتات بقى تيانخ سيو أنوش آنتك ستين بقى أكانخ وينو كتيانتي ويشبوا يوكتشتكي كاو كتشتي ووه سيات كوكا أتاك توتا آتو هيتي يش شويتا تاو آتو هيتي استكتت أيو ياخد تتكي خيخته يش تو هيتي يا وخسكو فاتا هوكوت يخنجت على توتا أهو تشوه
Wait, So we'd listen to it one line at a time. And we get to this part. And we write down Kaja Katek She. And then we get to this part. Ch'aaq Qawuchi Yasauk Chu Yidati De Yidatai Lingich Quatlus Kaja. And at that point, Nora turned to us and said, well, what is it? Kaja. I said, Yidati Ai Lingich Hatsati Tlechwasaku. And we all laughed. And then she explained it to us. It is a kelp island. And then, just working on this story and with all these, we probably had 5 or 6 speakers in the room and on the phone. And this speaker, really made it known to us that it was an important word. And so I just decided then and there, if I ever have a son, I'll name him Kaja. And so I did. First one was a girl, and her name was X'éig at birth. And then the second one, her name was X'éig at birth. The first one was a fun name. Second one was from Shkate Jesse Johnny. And then this one was from this story right here. And we're in Yakutat for a pretty somber event. And we're all pretty sad. And this little kid comes up to me and says, I think Kaja was probably 3, maybe 2. And this girl says, what's your son's name? I said, Kaja. Kaja, you do a salkachid. And she says, no, what's that? What is that in English? I said, it's a kelp island. And she walks away yelling at maybe her mom or something. His name is Kelp Island. So it was, that's pretty funny. That's pretty good.
Why did you want it to be a boy's name versus a girl?
I'm not really sure. I guess because the storyteller was a guy. I have no idea. It was just something that popped into my brain. And I said, we never knew the gender of any of our children. But I'll tell you something kind of neat. So the first one, we had little pink shoes, and it said X'éig. And had little blue shoes, and it said Kaja, which I know is just affirming the gender stereotype, but it was fun for us. And then we dressed them in all kinds of colors after that. And then when we had the second baby, Yúxch'i was visiting with me, and she said, keep an eye on your oldest child. Because if she stops being potty trained, she's changing the gender of the baby. And she was potty trained for well over a year at that point. And then she started to pee in her clothes. And then we had a girl. And so I was like, what? Wow, that's so wild. And then we had Kaja. And we didn't know the gender of any of them. And so the last one was Kaja. And so it was really fun. And there's a building in downtown Juneau they call Gudja Hit. And it's Kaja Hit is what I think it probably should be. And I got this picture of Kaja. He's getting out of a van. He was probably 4, maybe 3. And it was snowing these really big, fun, like big snowflakes. The ʼatudli is what they call them. I said, Kaja, you said Tina Gateway hit. He says, yeah? I said, Kaja hit you to a sago at. And he goes, no, it's ish hit. So it was very, very fun. So these stories are very fun to go through. It brings back a lot of memories of a lot of different people, a lot of different hands. There's all kinds of mistakes in the text. You'll see them all over the place. It takes a lifetime, and you'll still never get it all right. But it's so much fun to sort of see the way that Raven talks, the way that Raven does things. And just like, these are incredible stories. So I know we're still working on our How the People Got Flint. I know we started this George Davis story. We got 3 weeks left, so we'll do all we can. But I think prepare yourself for Susie James that's coming on Monday. Keep reviewing these texts because we do go through them. But there's so much there. There's like really you could do yourself a tremendous favor by listening to them again and reading along, and then reading the Tlingit out loud and trying to sound exactly like that speaker, just so that you're thinking about that, just the way they sound, those old timers, you know. And what we're trying to do is we mimic them because we want to sound like them. And we know that that's a tall order. It's okay to sound like you sound as you speak Tlingit. But when you're in this is like the 4th year of study, you should be really pushing yourself to get that so it distinctively sounds Tlingit. So that there will be a day where we can record you, and then we'll play this other old recording, and the learners of tomorrow will be like, oh, must have been recorded a long time ago. Sound like an old-time speaker. So, but, I mean, doing that kind of exercise, that's what got me to a point where I could go talk to somebody, and they'll say, bring back that, it was probably 15 years ago, 10 years ago, bring back that young man who talks like an old man. So now I'll be like, bring back that middle-aged man who talks like an older man.
But I'm just going to say about this story, like we get kind of locked into using one word for something, like chop down a tree or throw, a certain way or whatever. But like in this last story we listened to, they're using different words that we just don't use. Like there's we kind of we just kind of, I don't know how to say it, but kind of simplify things in a way, eh?
Yeah, like, we're looking at, there's a verb to encourage people with your words. Like there's a specific verb for that. And we look at all the variation in here. And so like a really fun exercise, like as we start getting towards summertime and you start thinking, what will I do now? And you could take these stories, like so many of these stories and speeches that we've looked at, and you could, if you want the original text, I could send it to you. But you could copy it all and paste in a 3-column table. And the middle column is you translating it yourself. Like and maybe you just have a 2-column thing. Translate it on your own. Cover up the answers and see if you can get there. Because then you'll get a real feeling for the depth of this language and what they're doing. Because yeah, I agree. Like there's so much stuff in here. Like adds inside of my unfinished canoe. Like there's just so much cool stuff. Like that's where I learned the word dach, was studying that stuff 18 years ago. 18 years, wait, what? So I guess when all these seniors who were graduating high school, when they were just being born, I was working on this story. So, I guess I better go take my bad back medicine and I better go to bed. So I'm just kidding. Shtiqaxatati inijaqani chaltakat yuhan. Ya chawasa at kakone chuoya we take ya kicked away uhan. Kadeen yan nalita ya hayagu. Achuwe gao yach aya ayaw tuacha. Ye away adati techotank. Wasa has to tuaw saguan. Haya tu tláak'w. Ya yaw tu tláak'w awe uhan. Ye awe ye choji. Eka ye gach tu tláak'w. Ya hadachchan kisani has to ya ak. Kadeen adach haya satak. Chutlai wuchi nye jituneyi. Gwashwan qanins. Chidzi llingich tu dultu. Chan qoa. Just iya achch, ka iya achch, ka iya achch. Itu de aya kenaltin. Aka awe. Ya shia dehini a. Jadu sahastu ikach tutlatu. Ye kak gwachwein. Ajawe. Hin yachyati. Yitlaani. Qaqan kagani yachyati awe. Yak yitlaani qaqasakhan. Ajawe. Ya hashukak. Kekwake ya hayu katangi kach. Vanilchish awe yejene. Kadeen shilsa. Sandik akshui kanach.
Here's it's a
Ganalchish.
Skydu.
Hey, are you going to the immersion thing on Saturday?
Yeah, and Sitka.
Oh, I thought it was here. I thought there's a TCLL one here.
I'm gonna pause.